"She's mine, now," Claire whispered. And I saw Danny tied to a chair, bruised wrists, gagged mouth. His baseball glove, our ritual, tossed on the floor like trash. I lunged, but she blocked the stares. "One more step, and I'll have you declared unfit." That wasn't even the worst part. She'd already filed for full custody, and her husband's firm was backing her. I walked out that door humiliated, but not broken, because what Claire didn't know was that I'd planted a camera. Her confession? Already recording. This time, she messed with the wrong father. And now, I'm coming back. My name is Michael Carver, and I'm 45 years old. My life revolves around my son Danny's baseball schedule. Practice 3 nights a week. Games every Saturday morning without fail. Sitting here in my kitchen, my coffee's getting cold in that old chipped Tiger's mug, while Danny's cleats dry on the floor vent. His scorecards are rubber banded to the fridge, my neat handwriting tracking every at-bat. My sister Claire used to be my rock through everything. The divorce, 2 layoffs, even the night Danny was born. But lately, her helpful mask has been slipping. "He needs more discipline," she'll say. Or, "You're too soft with him." Her offers to watch him are getting pushier, more frequent. What she doesn't know is, I document everything. Every comment, every strange interaction, all dated in my daybook. My jaw tightens when she says, "my family now," lingering too long on that "my." But let me start from the beginning. I remember that Tuesday like it was branded into my skull. Danny's baseball glove rode shotgun in my truck, our little tradition since he was 7. You could still see traces of infield dust on his white socks tossed in the back. And the promise I'd made that morning hung in the air. "We'll work on bunts after dinner, champ." Ever notice how normal days turn sideways when you least expect them to? I pulled into our driveway at 5:30, same as always. The shadows were stretching long across our front lawn, and Mrs. Peterson next door was watering her hydrangeas. Everything looked exactly right, except for the silence that hit me when I opened the front door. Danny's cleats were there by the doormat, lined up neat, like he always did. The granola bar and apple I'd left on the counter that morning hadn't been touched. My son never skips his after-school snack. Growing boys got a metabolism like a furnace. "Danny?" My voice echoed through the house. Nothing. Just that heavy kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. I pulled out my phone, thumbed through my contacts, called Sarah from next door first. Her kid walks home from school with Danny sometimes. "Haven't seen him today, Mike. Everything okay?" Coach Thompson was next. "Nah, he wasn't at practice. Figured he was sick or something. Want me to make some calls?" My fingers hovered over Claire's number. She lived closest to Danny's school route, always talking about how he should stop by more often. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. "Mike!" Her voice was bright. Too bright. What a nice surprise. "Claire, is Danny with you?" "Danny? No, why would he be?" There was a pause, then that tone she uses when she thinks I'm overreacting. "Now don't get yourself worked up. He's probably just at a friend's house. Did you check with that Tommy boy he's always talking about?" My stomach nodded. "Yeah, I checked. Listen, if you hear from him, of course. But really, Mike, stay calm. Boys this age need their space sometimes." I hung up and stared at my phone. The kitchen clock read 6:45 p.m. Danny had never been gone this long without telling me where he was. Never. The police station was quiet when I walked in. Just a desk sergeant typing away, and the hum of fluorescent lights. He barely looked up when I started explaining. "How old's your boy?" he asked, still typing. 13. "Mm-hmm. And when did you last see him?" "This morning, before school. He always comes straight home, always lets me know if plans change." The sergeant's fingers stopped moving. He gave me that look, the one that says he's heard this story 100 times. "Sir, in my experience, teenage runaways usually come home when they get hungry. Give it 24 hours. He's not a runaway." My chest was so tight I could barely get the words out. His baseball gear's still here. He'd never leave without his glove. But the sergeant was already sliding a form across the desk. "Fill this out. We'll put out a notice, but like I said, 24 hours. Back home, the silence had grown teeth. Every creak of the house made me jump, hoping it was Danny's footsteps on the porch. I kept checking my phone, willing it to ring. The streetlight outside cast yellow squares on our empty driveway while I paced. Remember when I said Danny never breaks promises? That's not just father's pride talking. When he says he'll do something, whether it's working on bunts or calling if he's running late, he follows through. It's just who he is. I stood at the window until midnight, watching that empty sidewalk. The baseball glove was still sitting in my truck's passenger seat, waiting for hands that should have been there hours ago. Ever tried to sleep when your mind won't stop spinning? I tossed and turned all night, watching the clock tick past hours I should have been dreaming. By 6 a.m., I was already in my truck, heading to Danny's school. The morning sun hadn't even burned off the dew when I parked in the visitor's lot. You know those moments when everything looks normal but feels wrong? The kids streaming through the front doors, backpacks bouncing. It was like watching a TV show where one crucial piece was missing. Ms. Rodriguez, the attendance secretary, knew Danny from his perfect record. Her face softened when I explained why I was there. "Let me check the system," she said, fingers flying over her keyboard. "Yes, Daniel was here yesterday. Marked present through lunch period. What about after that?" My hands were gripping the counter too tight. Had to force myself to ease up. She clicked through a few more screens. Nothing unusual. No nurse visits, no early dismissal. There was supposed to be a permission slip pickup after last period, I said. For the weekend tournament. More clicking. The coach's roster shows Daniel never collected his form. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Danny had been talking about that tournament for weeks. No way he'd forget that slip. Not with his chance to pitch on the line. The precinct looked different in daylight, but that didn't make it any more helpful. Same desk sergeant was there. Different coffee cup in hand. "Sir," he said after I laid out the timeline again, "I understand you're worried, but we see this all the time. Kids this age." "He's not kids this age," I cut in. "He's my son. He's missing practice, missing tournament paperwork. Something's wrong." He sighed, scratched something in his notebook. "We've got the notice out. That's protocol for the first 48 hours. My phone buzzed while I was walking out. Voicemail from work. "Mike, it's Jim. Third shift you've missed. I know it's a situation, but we need bodies on the line. Got you covered through Thursday, but we need you by Friday, or HR's gonna have questions." Back home, I cleared the kitchen whiteboard where Danny and I usually tracked his batting averages, started mapping everything out instead. School, baseball field, Tommy's house, the route he walks. My hand hesitated over Claire's street, drew a circle around it. Couldn't bring myself to write her name. That's when memories started clicking together like puzzle pieces I wish I'd seen sooner. Claire at Danny's last game, talking about how structure builds character while watching him pitch. Her voice getting sharp when I mentioned letting him skip practice for his friend's birthday party. "Boys need discipline, Michael," she'd said. "You're too soft with him. Let me take him full-time for a month. I'll show you what routine can do." I'd laughed it off then. Who takes their nephew for a month? But now, my marker squeaked against the board as I wrote, "Why now?" under that circled street. The question sat there, ugly and accusing, while cold certainty crept up my spine. Grabbed my keys, didn't even bother changing my shirt. Had to drive. Had to move. Found myself taking Danny's school route, turning onto side streets that led, like they were magnetized, toward Claire's neighborhood. The late afternoon sun was casting long shadows when I pulled onto her cul-de-sac. Kept my distance, parked where her security cameras wouldn't catch me. The house looked exactly like it always did. Perfect lawn, trimmed hedges, not a shingle out of place. Everything controlled, just the way Claire likes it. I sat there, engine off, watching my sister's house and feeling sick at how much sense it all made. The comments about my parenting. The offers to help. The way she'd been pushing harder lately about having Danny over more. A cold weight settled in my stomach as I wrote one more thing on my mental list. How many times she'd mentioned her husband's connections at the family court. Night was creeping in when I drove past Claire's place again. The streetlights were just starting to flicker on, casting weird shadows through those perfect hedges she probably measured with a ruler. I eased off the gas, letting my car coast past the row of matching mailboxes. You ever have one of those moments where everything just stops? Where your whole world narrows down to this tiny point of focus that changes everything. That's what happened when I glanced up at that second-floor window. A thin slice of light cut through the darkness, where the shade didn't quite meet the windowsill. And there, right there in that slice of light, a shadow moved. Small, familiar. The kind of shadow that comes from shoulders hunched forward from carrying a baseball bag too long after practice. Danny. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard I felt the leather creak. Had to bite down on the inside of my cheek to keep from shouting, from laying on the horn, from doing anything that would give me away. One wrong move and Claire would know I'd figured it out. One wrong move, and who knows what she'd do next. I forced myself to keep driving, nice and steady, like I was just another neighbor heading home. Turned right at the corner, then right again. And again. Had to see that window one more time. Had to be sure. Second pass. Same shadow. Third pass. I found a spot to park where Claire's fancy porch camera wouldn't catch me. Tucked behind old Mrs. Peterson's oversized hedge. She'd always complained about Claire's surveillance system at the block parties. Guess she had good reason. Danny, I whispered to the empty dashboard. My voice sounded strange in the quiet car. Hold on, buddy. I started counting seconds between the shadows crossing that strip of light. 23 seconds. 47. 35. Like he was pacing, maybe. Or trying to find a signal on his phone, if Claire had let him keep it. Remember playing hide and seek with Claire when we were kids? She'd always find the best spots. Stay perfectly still for hours. Patient. Calculating. Now she was using those same skills to hide my son from me. The sound was so faint I almost missed it. The soft click of a door opening somewhere inside the house, then nothing. The kind of nothing that feels like it's watching you back. My hands were shaking when I turned the key in the ignition. Not from fear, from holding back everything I wanted to do. From knowing I had to play this smart, not fast. Had to protect Danny, not just get to him. But I couldn't drive away. Not now. Not when I knew for sure he was in there. The dashboard clock read 8:47 when I decided to knock. Just a brother, stopping by to check on his sister. Nothing suspicious about that, right? You know that feeling when you're about to step off a high dive? That moment when you know there's no turning back. That's what it felt like. Walking up Claire's perfect brick path in the growing dark. Each step taking me closer to a confrontation I never thought I'd have to face. My footsteps sounded too loud on the stamped concrete. The porch light clicked on automatically. Motion sensors, another one of Claire's security measures. The front door looked exactly like it had 100 times before, but now it felt like a barrier between me and everything that mattered. I raised my hand to knock, trying to steady my breathing, trying to look like someone who didn't know their sister was hiding their kidnapped son upstairs. Standing there on Claire's porch, my hand halfway to the door, I forced myself to stop, to think. You know how sometimes the hardest thing is doing nothing when everything in you screams to act? That's what it felt like, turning around and walking back to my car that night. But I'd learned something about Claire during our childhood games. She was always watching, always calculating. One wrong move now could give her ammunition for later. And boy, did she know how to use ammunition. I barely slept, spending most of the night rehearsing what I'd say. Had to get it just right. Concerned but not desperate, cooperative but not weak. By dawn, my coffee-stained notepad had a script that could have been from one of those courtroom dramas Claire's husband always watched. The morning sun hit her pristine flower beds as I parked in the same spot I'd used the night before. My phone was already recording in my pocket. Old habit from my construction days, documenting everything. Never thought I'd need it against my own sister. 8:15 exactly when I rang her doorbell. Claire always respected punctuality. Said it showed character. The chime echoed inside. Some fancy Westminster thing she'd installed last Christmas. Michael? She opened the door wearing that perfect hostess smile, like I was right on time for Sunday dinner. This is a surprise. Her foyer looked like something out of those home magazines she collected. Everything arranged just so. Family photos at precise angles. That lemon cleaner smell hit me as soon as I stepped inside, sharp and artificial. Some things never changed. Hey, sis. I kept my voice steady, matching the script in my head. Got a minute? Of course. She gestured toward the kitchen. Ever the proper host. Coffee? I followed her past the staircase, my eyes catching that familiar scuff on the 5th tread. Used to drive her crazy when we'd slide down these stairs as kids, our sneakers marking up her perfect house. Funny how some marks never buff out, no matter how hard you try. The kitchen was all gleaming granite and stainless steel, morning light streaming through spotless windows. Claire busied herself with the coffee maker, one of those complicated machines that probably cost more than my first car. I need your help, I said, easing into the role of concerned father. Danny's missing. Her hands paused for just a fraction of a second as she measured coffee grounds. Missing? What do you mean? Since yesterday afternoon. Last seen. Around this neighborhood, actually. I watched her face carefully. But she'd always been good at masks. Oh, Michael. She turned, sympathy perfectly arranged on her features. That must be terrible for you. Have you called the police? They think he's just another runaway. I shrugged, playing it casual. But you know Danny. Baseball is his life. He'd never miss practice. Teenagers can be unpredictable, she said, setting a coffee mug in front of me. Remember when I ran away to Aunt Sarah's that summer? I was about to respond when I heard it. So faint I might have missed it if I hadn't been listening for exactly this kind of slip. Above us, through the ceiling, the whisper of fabric against wood. Then a sharp intake of breath, quickly stifled. My heart slammed against my ribs like I'd just connected with a fastball. That solid crack of certainty you feel all the way through your bones. Danny was up there, probably trying to hear every word. Claire was still talking. Something about teenage rebellion and proper discipline, but I barely heard her. My focus had narrowed to that space above us, tracking every tiny sound. I held up one finger, interrupting her mid-sentence. Sorry, just one more question. A floorboard creaked overhead, clear as a confession. You took him. The words came out quieter than I meant them, too, but they landed hard in that perfect kitchen. Claire's smile didn't just fade. It transformed, like someone had wiped away makeup to reveal steel underneath. Took him? She set her coffee mug down with a sharp click. That's quite an accusation, Michael. Don't. I pressed my palms flat against her granite countertop, steadying myself. I heard him upstairs, and I saw him in the window last night. What you need to understand, she said, her voice taking on that lecture tone I'd grown to hate, is that Danny needs discipline, structure, everything you failed to provide. My jaw clenched so tight I could hear my teeth creak. Failed? Look at how you're raising him. She gestured dismissively toward my work jacket, like its worn edges proved her point. 3 strikes and he sits out? Missing practice when his arm's sore? You're raising a quitter, Michael. Someone who'll fold at the first sign of pressure. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the police report. This isn't about baseball. This is kidnapping. She actually laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that echoed off her spotless appliances. Kidnapping? Please. This is long overdue intervention. Danny needs guidance from someone who understands what it takes to succeed. Let me see him. I stood straighter, using every inch of height I had on her. Now, after school hours, she said smoothly, and with proper supervision. We wouldn't want anyone claiming improper influence, would we? That's when I heard it. A soft, "Dad?" from upstairs, quickly muffled. My heart jumped and my feet started moving before my brain could catch up. But Claire was faster, stepping between me and the stairs. I wouldn't. Her voice dropped low, dangerous. One more step and I call the police. Trespassing, harassment, unstable behavior. How do you think that'll look to a family court judge? I froze, the threat hitting home. You wouldn't. Jim's firm specializes in custody cases. She smiled again, but it never reached her eyes. They know exactly how to handle unfit parents. One phone call, and we can start proceedings today. Is that what you want? The coffee maker hissed behind us, filling the silence with steam. I looked past her shoulder at those stairs, knowing my boy was up there, probably pressed against his door listening to every word. My hands wanted to shake, but I kept them steady. Think carefully, Claire continued, about what's best for Danny, about your, limitations as a single parent. I'd never hit anyone in my life, but right then, looking at my sister's smug face, I understood how people cross that line. Instead, I turned and walked out. Each step felt like moving through concrete, but I forced myself to keep going, past her precious family photos, past that scuffed stare that suddenly felt like the last piece of real childhood left in this house. Claire followed, probably making sure I actually left. We'll be in touch about supervised visits, she called after me, like she was doing me some kind of favor. I didn't trust myself to answer. Just pushed through her front door, careful not to slam it, though God knows I wanted to kick it off its hinges. The morning sun felt wrong somehow, too bright for what had just happened, too normal. Standing on her perfect walkway, everything inside me screamed to go back, to fight my way upstairs, to grab my boy and run. But Claire's threat hung in the air like smoke. One wrong move and I could lose Danny forever through the courts. She had the power, the connections, the picture-perfect house. What did I have? A police report they weren't taking seriously. A recording of a conversation that proved nothing except that my sister was concerned about her nephew. But as I reached my car, something shifted in my mind. Claire had always been about evidence, about documentation. Every childhood argument she'd kept a diary. Every adult disagreement. She had dates and times written down. Maybe it was time I started playing her game. I drove home in a daze, muscle memory taking me through intersections while my mind raced. You ever notice how the worst moments in life have this weird clarity? Like your brain's taking snapshots it knows you'll need later? Back at my kitchen table, I dumped out my laptop bag and started fresh with a new folder. Called it Timeline and dated it right there on the tab. First thing I did was print out my call log from yesterday. Timestamps don't lie, and I needed every scrap of truth I could get. Let's do this right, I muttered, spreading everything out like game film analysis. Remember those old detective shows where they pin everything to a board? That's what my kitchen table became. Cell records showing my calls to the neighbor, Coach Wilson Claire. Email from the school confirming Danny was there through lunch. Hell, I even took pictures of his cleats still sitting by the door, exactly where he'd left them. The whole time, my coffee went cold in that chipped mug Danny painted for me in art class. You know the one. Looks like a baseball got sick all over it, but it's been my favorite ever since. Around 2 the next afternoon, the mail truck rumbled past. I wasn't expecting anything, but something made me check anyway. Good thing too. There it was. Certified letter, return address from Claire's husband's law firm. My hands shook a little as I signed for it. The paper inside was heavy, official looking. 30 days. They were giving me 30 days before a custody hearing. 30 days to prove I deserved to keep my own son. I walked straight to the kitchen calendar, the one with all Danny's games marked in blue. Grabbed a red Sharpie and circled May 15th 3 times, hard enough the ink bled through to June. The date stared back at me like a countdown timer. Okay, I said to the empty kitchen. Okay, sometimes you have to hear your own voice, you know. Remind yourself you're still standing. Back at the precinct, Officer Martinez, different guy from yesterday, listened to my whole story again. Real patient, taking notes and everything. But when I asked for a welfare check, his pen slowed down. Family dispute, he said, typing something into his computer. We'll send someone by. Looks like Tuesday's our first opening. 4 days away. I could already see how it would play out. Claire would have Danny cleaned up, coached up, ready to say all the right things. I'm fine, officer, just spending time with my aunt, and that would be that. My hands were starting to shake again, so I shoved them in my pockets. Can't show them you're rattled. That's what my old foreman used to say. Tuesday, I repeated, keeping my voice steady. Could you make that official? For the record? He nodded. Wrote me up a case number. One more piece of paper for my timeline folder. Driving home, my mind wanted to sprint ahead. Wanted to imagine worst cases, plan escapes, dream up wild rescues, but I forced it back to walk. Panic burns days, and that clock Claire started doesn't give discounts for good intentions. At my workbench in the garage, I dug out the little voice recorder I used to use for job site notes, checked the batteries, tested the mic, clear as a bell. Then I pulled up my contacts list on my phone, scrolling past names I hadn't called in years. Some people, when things go wrong, they move fast and loud. Make a scene, throw their weight around. But that's not my way. Never has been. What I needed now was precision. Documentation. Every step recorded. Every move logged. I set the voice recorder next to my timeline folder and stared at them, both. 30 days. Claire thought she had all the power. The fancy house, the lawyer husband, the perfect image. But sometimes power isn't about who has the most cards. Sometimes it's about who plays them better. The kitchen clock ticked behind me, marking off another minute. Another minute my boy was stuck in that house, probably wondering if his dad had given up on him. Not a chance, buddy, I whispered. Not a chance in hell. I couldn't sleep. So I pulled up footage from Danny's last game on my phone. Bottom of the 7th, tie score. And there's my boy stepping up to the plate. His stance was perfect, just like we'd practiced in the backyard 100 times. The way he wiggled his back foot, adjusted his helmet. Little things that made my chest tight. The buzzing startled me. Text from Mark. You okay? Mark Rodriguez. We'd played AA ball together years ago, before. Injuries sent us both into regular jobs. He coached his kids' team now, sometimes played against Danny's squad. Good man, straight shooter. I hit call before I could talk myself out of it. Mike, he answered on the first ring. What's going on? Heard Danny missed practice. The whole story came pouring out. The disappearance, Claire's smirking confession, the custody threat. Mark didn't interrupt once, just listened. You forget how valuable that is sometimes, just having somebody really listen. When I finished, the line went quiet for a moment. Then Mark cleared his throat. You need proof, not rage, brother. Let's meet. Denny's on 5th, 20 minutes. The diner was nearly empty at that hour. Mark already had coffee waiting when I slid into the booth. I spread out my timeline folder. The photos, the call logs, everything. His eyes narrowed as he read through it. Your sister's playing dirty, he said finally. But she's also getting cocky. That's where we get her. He grabbed a napkin, started sketching something. Look, you need hard evidence of what she's doing. Her words, her threats, everything. His pen moved faster. I've got this mini camera from when we thought someone was stealing equipment from the batting cages. Tiny thing, works through fabric. I leaned forward. What are you thinking? Danny's old backpack, the blue one with the team logo. We mount the camera inside, point it out through the mesh. You call Claire, all apologetic, say you want to make peace, request a short visit. He tapped the pen against the napkin. Then you accidentally leave the backpack there. My coffee stopped halfway to my mouth. She'll see right through it. Not if you play it right. Mark's voice dropped lower. Look, she's expecting you angry. Desperate. Give her contrite instead. Controlled. Make her think she's winning. The idea started taking shape in my head. Claire would eat that up. Me coming hat in hand, playing by her rules. Her kind of control. We should practice, Mark said. Get your delivery perfect. I'll play Claire. We spent the next hour running through scenarios. Mark was brutal, throwing every manipulation Claire might try. Each time I stumbled, we backed up, tried again. Slower. Smoother. More convinced. Remember, Mark said, after what felt like the 100th take, you're not lying. You do want to see your son. You are willing to be reasonable, just leave out the part about the camera. I nodded, pulled out my phone. The numbers I'd been staring at for days felt different now. Less like a threat, more like a tool. Deep breath, Mark said. You got this. I hit dial. 1 ring, 2. My free hand curled into a fist under the table. Hello? Claire's voice, sharp with surprise. Claire. I kept my tone even, just like we'd practiced. Let the silence hang for 2 beats. I overreacted yesterday. I want to make peace and see him. Mark gave me a thumbs up across the booth. The game was on. Sometimes people ask me if I felt bad about the deception, about planning it all out like this. But here's the thing. When someone takes your child, when they threaten to steal away your whole world using lawyers and lies, well, the rules change. You do what you have to do. And sitting there in that fluorescent-lit diner, watching Mark sketch out our strategy on that coffee-stained napkin, I finally felt something I hadn't since Danny disappeared. Hope. Small, careful hope. But sometimes that's all you need to start with. Mark's garage looked exactly like you'd expect from an ex-ball player turned youth coach, neat rows of equipment, practice schedules pinned up, that familiar leather and dust smell that never quite leaves. He pulled out a small metal case from behind some batting helmets. Military grade, he said, opening it to reveal what looked like a black button, but simple to use. Records straight to your phone through this app. We spent the next hour hunched over Danny's old backpack under the workbench light. Mark's steady, hands guiding the tiny lens through the fabric beneath the team logo. Every few minutes, we'd test the feed, adjusting until the angle was perfect. Remember, Mark said, checking the final positioning. It's got about 6 hours of battery. Make sure she gets talking fast. Back home, I stood in my kitchen, running through test footage. The backpack sat on a chair while I moved around, checking sound quality under the running fan, making sure the video caught everything clear enough for a judge. My voice came through the speaker. Testing, 1, 2, crystal clear. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the angry texts I'd sent Claire. Delete, delete, delete. Each one felt like swallowing pride, but Mark was right. I needed her overconfident, not defensive. I typed out a new message. Sorry about yesterday. Want to start fresh. Bringing flowers. The store-bought lilies felt like props in my hand as I walked up Claire's path the next morning. The backpack hung casual and loose on my shoulder, just another dad dropping by. Just another normal day. My heart wasn't buying it, though. Pounding so hard I worried the camera would pick up the echo. You know those moments when time seems to stretch? When you're so focused on keeping your face neutral that everything else goes slow motion? That's how it felt when Claire opened the door. She studied me, head tilted. That same analytical look she'd had since we were kids, and she was deciding whether to tell Mom about whatever trouble I'd gotten into. I could practically see her running the calculations behind her eyes. The flowers are nice, she said finally, stepping back. Living room, 10 minutes. Danny was already seated on the couch, hands folded in his lap like he was posing for a portrait. That wasn't my boy's natural slouch. That was Claire's arranging. My chest tightened, but I kept my smile steady. Hey, buddy. I knelt in front of him, arms open. He fell into them like he was starving for it, and I had to fight to keep my voice even. I miss you, I whispered against his hair. Then lower. Just for him. I'm fixing this. Promise. When I pulled back, I kept my movements casual, shrugging off the backpack. Brought your favorite one for school. Tomorrow. The blue really matches your new uniform. Claire's eyes tracked the backpack as I set it beside him. Perfect. Let her think she was reading me, seeing my desperation to maintain normal routines. Thanks for letting me stop by, I said, standing. I've got to run some errands across town. but maybe we can talk about a regular schedule soon? We'll see, Claire said, that familiar control smile back in place. Danny, say goodbye to your father. The hug was quick, too quick. But I forced myself to walk, not run, to the door. Once outside, my hands started shaking so bad I nearly dropped my keys twice before getting the car door open. I drove around the corner, pulled into an empty lot behind the strip mall where I could see Claire's roof through the trees. Fingers trembling, I opened Mark's app and waited for the connection to buffer. The little loading circle felt like it was taking years. Then suddenly, video. Clear as day, showing Claire's living room from backpack level. The sound kicked in just as my sister walked into frame, settling into her armchair like a queen about to hold court. Now then, Danny, she started, and I could already see the lecture forming on her lips. Let's talk about why this new arrangement is for the best. I pressed record, my grip white-knuckled on the phone. You made a mistake, Claire. You got cocky, and I was going to get every word. I cranked the volume, hunched over my phone like it was broadcasting lottery numbers. Claire's heels clicked across her hardwood as she paced, each turn sharp as a drill sergeant's. Your father, she started, and I could hear that old familiar tone, the one she used when explaining why someone else was wrong and she was right. He's making you soft, Danny. You know that, don't you? Through the backpack's lens, I watched my son shift on the couch. His shoulders pulled in tight, a movement I knew too well. It was his weather the storm pose, the one he'd get during tough innings when the count was full. Baseball! Claire spat the word like it was dirty. Hours and hours of playing games while your grades slip, while your potential slips. She leaned closer to Danny, her face filling the frame. Do you think colleges care about Little League trophies? My boy's voice came through small, uncertain. Dad says, your father says a lot of things. Claire cut him off. But what has he actually done? A factory job? A rental house? Is that what you want for yourself? Ever seen someone you love turn into a stranger? It's like watching a mask peel away, only to find another mask underneath. Meaner. Colder. My sister's voice had gone razor sharp, slice by slice carving away at everything my son and I had built. Dad loves me, Danny said, and damn if my heart didn't swell even as it broke. His voice wobbled but held steady. That's my boy. Love? Claire laughed. Not her real laugh, but that hollow society laugh she'd picked up from her husband's firm parties. Love is structure. Love is discipline. Love is making hard choices for someone else's good. She straightened, smoothing her skirt. And that's exactly what I'm doing. The camera angle shifted as Danny reached for the backpack. Claire's hand flashed out, stopping him. Leave it. You won't need it tomorrow. But school, we're done with that school. Claire's voice had that final verdict tone she'd used since we were kids. I've already arranged your transfer. New uniform, new standards, new life. She smiled, and it was like watching ice form. I will make you mine, Danny. My son, my family, the way it should have been from the start. My fingers were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone, but I managed to freeze the frame. There it was, 2:47 p.m. Crystal clear audio, Claire's face in perfect focus as she laid out her whole twisted plan. You ever get that feeling where your blood runs cold and hot at the same time? That's what hit me as I backed up the video to 3 different drives, sent a copy to Mark with timestamp notes, then another backup, because when you're holding dynamite, you make damn sure the fuse is perfect. I glanced at my kitchen calendar. That red circle around court day might as well have been drawn in neon. 48 hours. My hands steadied as I started printing. Transcript pages, screenshots, exhibit labels. Each one went into a fresh folder with chain of custody notes that would make an evidence clerk proud. Mark called around midnight. You got everything? Triple backed up, I said, checking my watch. Meeting my lawyer first thing. Get some sleep, he said. But we both knew better. I lay down in my clothes. Dress shirt, tie loose around my neck. Saving minutes, saving seconds. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw stadium lights blazing. Then they'd shift and morph into fluorescent courtroom panels, bright and unforgiving. The alarm buzzed at 5:50 a.m., 10 minutes earlier than I'd need to be perfect pressed and downtown. I was already up, staring at the ceiling, running through the video in my head. Claire's words echoed. I will make you mine. No, sis, you won't. I grabbed the folder, checked the backup drives one last time, and headed for my car. The morning was still dark, but I could feel dawn coming. Some days you just know the sun's about to rise. Mark was already waiting in the parking garage when I pulled in, 2 coffee cups steaming on his truck's hood. The sky was just starting to fade from black to navy, that hollow time before dawn, when everything feels a little unreal. "Run it again," he said, clicking his stopwatch. I straightened my tie and delivered my opening like we'd practiced. "Your Honor, the video evidence will show clear intent to permanently separate me from my son through deception and threats. Clean, direct, no emotion bleeding through." Mark checked the time. "Better. You're not rushing the middle part now." We'd been at this since 4 a.m., drilling my testimony until it felt carved into my bones. Amazing how a guy I used to play ball with had turned into my rock-solid lifeline. Then again, maybe that's exactly why. Baseball teaches you about coming through when it counts. "One more time," I said, taking a sip of coffee that had gone lukewarm. "Need to nail the timeline portion." Mark nodded, understanding in his eyes. He'd been through his own custody battle years back. "Remember, keep your eyes on the judge when Claire's video plays. Don't give her the satisfaction of a reaction." The courthouse opened at 7:30 sharp. I was first in line at the clerk's window, manila folder held tight against my chest like armor. The clerk, Barbara, according to her nameplate, took my filing with that seen-it-all efficiency of someone who's handled every kind of family drama. "Timestamp. Exhibits logged. You'll need this drive for the multimedia submission." She handed over a standard-issue USB stick. "Make sure your video format is compatible." My hands were steady as I copied over the files, triple-checking that everything transferred clean. Barbara verified the upload, printed a receipt, and slid it across the counter. 7:42 a.m. Time stamped and official. I stepped away to call the precinct liaison. Officer Martinez, who'd finally started taking this seriously once I mentioned court proceedings. "New evidence submitted," I told her. "Video confirmation of custodial interference." "I'll update the report," she said. "Good luck in there." The courtroom doors wouldn't open until 8:45, so I paced the hallway, reviewing my notes one last time. Mark had gone to park the truck, promising to slip in before things started. My pen was clipped just right in my jacket pocket, fresh legal pad tucked under my arm. Ready as I'd ever be. You know that charged feeling right before a thunderstorm? That's what hit me when Claire walked in. She had on her power suit, charcoal gray, razor-creased, with some young attorney from her husband's firm trailing behind her. The kid looked fresh out of law school, probably hoping to impress the partners with a simple family matter. Claire carried a white binder with "structure" written in her perfect penmanship. Of course she'd label it that. Everything in its place. Everyone under control. That was Claire's whole world view. My throat went dry as we filed into the courtroom. The wood panels seemed to close in, making the air thick and heavy. I focused on the judge's nameplate, Honorable Margaret Chen, letting the polished brass letters anchor my attention. The bailiff's voice cut through my thoughts. "All rise." Judge Chen entered, efficient and no-nonsense in her movements. She settled into her chair, reviewed something on her monitor, then looked up at all of us. "Case number 2023, FC 147, custody modification hearing." She glanced between Claire and me. "I understand there's new evidence to be presented?" I stood, willing my voice to stay level. "Yes, Your Honor. Video and audio. Documentation relevant to the modification request." I handed the court drive to the bailiff. Judge Chen nodded to her clerk. Counsel approached to review. Claire's young attorney moved forward, but I saw the first crack in her composure. A tiny flutter in her jaw, the same tell she'd had since we were kids playing poker with matchsticks. She knew what was coming. The bailiff inserted the drive, and the courtroom screen flickered to life. Very watched a fastball heading straight for the plate, knowing it's going to change everything. That's what it felt like as Claire's voice filled the courtroom. "You think your father knows what's best?" Her recorded words dripped with venom. "He's making you soft, turning you into a quitter. This is your proper home now." My boy's voice trembled. "But Dad says—" "Your father doesn't say anything in this house." The camera caught her pacing. That perfect posture turning predatory. "I'm giving you structure, discipline, the kind of guidance a real parent provides." I kept my eyes locked on Judge Chen's face, just like Mark and I had practiced. Don't look at Claire. Don't give her the satisfaction. But man, my knuckles were white against that folder, creasing cardboard that had been crisp 10 minutes ago. "You'll thank me when you're older," Claire continued on screen. "When you're strong, instead of weak. Because I will make you mine." The timestamp blinked in the corner. 7:42 p.m. 2 nights ago. Crystal clear, no static, no room for doubt. Judge Chen raised her hand and the clerk froze the frame. "Miss Carver, she said, her tone careful and measured. Can you confirm that is your voice in this recording? Claire's perfect posture cracked. She glanced at her young attorney, who was already flipping frantically through that pristine white binder. Your Honor, Claire started. If I could explain the context, a simple yes or no, Ms. Carver. Is that your voice? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Chen made a note. Exhibit A is entered into evidence. She looked at Claire's attorney. Counselor? The young associate was already half standing, his eyes darting to the partner who'd slipped into the gallery behind Claire. They had one of those whispered lawyer conversations that somehow carry across a silent room without being quite audible. Your Honor, the associate said finally, his voice higher than before. The firm requests a brief recess. 15 minutes, Judge Chen allowed. I didn't move during the break, just sat there breathing slow and steady like I was in the batter's box. Through the corner of my eye, I watched Claire's legal team huddle in the hallway. The partner was gesturing sharply, the associate nodding rapidly. Remember what we practiced, I told myself. Finish clean. When we reconvened, the associate stood with papers already in hand. Your Honor, at this time, we must respectfully withdraw as counsel for Ms. Carver. Claire's head snapped up. What? The firm cannot continue representation given recent developments. And just like that, her carefully built structure started crumbling. Claire surged to her feet, that perfect facade shattering like a dropped mirror. This is absurd. I was protecting him. Her voice climbed higher with each word. If you just let me explain the context. Ms. Carver, Judge Chen's tone could have frozen summer. You are on video admitting to custodial interference and making explicit threats regarding permanent alienation. The context is quite clear. I squeezed that folder tighter, feeling the edges curl under my fingers. Almost there. Finish clean. This court takes a very dim view of parties who attempt to circumvent custody orders through deception and force. Judge Chen was writing now, her pen scratching against paper like a sentence being carved in stone. I am issuing an immediate emergency protective order. Mr. Carver will retain full custody. Ms. Carver's access will be suspended pending a full hearing and mandatory counseling. The judge looked up, steel in her gaze. Ms. Carver, you are hereby ordered to cease all contact with the minor child. Any violation will result in contempt charges. Do you understand? Claire's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her perfect script had turned to ash. I require a verbal response, Ms. Carver. Yes, Your Honor. I kept my eyes forward, breathing slow and steady, while Judge Chen finished writing the order. The only sound was Claire's ragged breathing and the scratch of the judge's pen. Finish clean, I reminded myself. Just finish clean. The court orders immediate return of the minor child to his father's full custody. Judge Chen's words rang like a bell through the courtroom. Ms. Carver will have no unsupervised contact until completing court-mandated counseling and demonstrating significant behavioral change. My hands were steady now as I signed the orders. 1, 2, 3 copies. Each signature felt like laying down another brick in the wall between Claire and her power to hurt us. The clerk stamped them with that satisfying metal chunk that makes everything official. You know that moment when you've been holding your breath so long you forgot you were doing it? That's what it felt like walking out of that courtroom. The marble hallway echoed with each step, and there was Mark, leaning against a pillar with his arms crossed. He gave me that slight nod, the same one he used to give when I'd nail a crucial pitch back in our playing days. It's done, I said. More than done. He held up his phone. Your sister's husband's firm just issued a statement. They're publicly cutting ties with her. Something about ethical concerns incompatible with their family law practice. He scrolled down. It's already hitting the local news sites. I let out a long breath. Claire had always cared more about appearance than anything else. Losing her social standing, her connection to that prestigious firm, it would hit her harder than any fine or restriction. The police are picking him up from her house now, Mark said. They'll meet us at your place in an hour. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. We'd planned this part too. No confrontation at Claire's house, no chance for last-minute drama. Let the professionals handle the transfer. That hour was the longest of my life. I paced my kitchen, straightened the magnets on the fridge, adjusted his baseball trophies on the shelf. When I heard the cruiser pull up, my heart nearly stopped. But there he was, climbing out of the back seat, his backpack clutched to his chest like a shield. I met him at the front walk, and he crashed into me with a hug that nearly took us both down. Over his head, I nodded thanks to the officers. Dad, he whispered, and that one word held everything. I kept my voice steady. Want to hit some balls? His head shot up, eyes bright for the first time in weeks. Really? Really? I grabbed his gear bag. I'd kept it ready by the door all this time. Your choice of warm-up music. 20 minutes later, we pulled into Riverside Field. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples behind the outfield fence. Small-town diamonds like this one are special at dusk. When the stadium lights kick on and create that perfect bubble of brightness, like nothing exists beyond the baselines. He scrolled through his phone, and the opening notes of Sweet Caroline drifted from the PA system. Our song. I felt something in my chest crack and heal at the same time. Good choice, buddy. I tossed him his glove. Let's get loose. We started easy, just playing catch, finding our rhythm again. The smack of ball against leather echoed across the empty stands. With each throw, I saw his shoulders relax a little more, his movements becoming more fluid, more natural. Ready to hit? I asked after a while. He nodded, already jogging toward home plate. I watched him settle into his stance, feet shoulder-width apart, bat held high, just like we'd practiced 1,000 times before. Some things you don't forget, even when the world tries to shake you apart. The first pitch was a gentle arc, right in his wheelhouse. He waited, timed it perfectly, and connected. The crack echoed off the outfield fence as the ball soared into the night air, a white streak against the dark sky. We both watched it fly, carrying all the way to deep center field before dropping onto the warning track. He turned to me, grinning, and in that moment, I saw our future snap back into focus. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder, feeling the solid reality of him there. Listen, I said softly. I need you to remember something. Betrayal breaks blood, but love rebuilds stronger. He leaned into my side, and we watched the stadium lights shine down on the diamond that had always been our sanctuary. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but right now, in this perfect bubble of brightness, we were home.